Hi, I'm Nicole, and this is Nick's Picks. So basically, I post a video every month just talking about the books that I picked out to read that month. So this is the last video of 2025, and I'll be talking about the 3 books that I read in December. So last month, for the first time, I kind of gave a little preview as to what I was going to be reading, and it turns out I read exactly that. I didn't know if I'd have time for both of them because they were big books. But unfortunately, my family was sick with the flu, my husband, my daughter, and myself. So I had a whole week home. So I ended up reading everything. So the first one is Merry Christmas, You Filthy Animal by Megan Quinn. Now, this is a sequel to another holiday book of hers, How My Neighbor Stole Christmas. So as I mentioned last month, when I read this last year, I read it like right after Christmas last year, I didn't love this book. There were 2 main reasons. The first being that the pacing was so slow. We went from, it's a very big book, and nothing happened for such a long time, I almost abandoned it. And then all of a sudden it goes from nothing to everything, and a lot of stuff happens. So in terms of romance, I could do a clean romance, like a Hallmark movie, love that. And I also love like filthy, smutty romances. That's great too. But this was just like an unnatural combo of both, if that makes sense. Like, it just was too abrupt a change. We went from absolutely clean, squeaky, nothing happening to all of a sudden these characters saying and doing these things that just, quite frankly, seemed out of character because it was just such an abrupt shift. It was just weird. So that's why I didn't love the transition of the like no romance to like crazy smut. It was just very jarring, and even like the sexy scenes, like there's like a famous thing with a candy cane in here, was funny to me. Like, it was like borderline gross. Like, it was not really sexy. It was just like kind of amusing. Like, I couldn't wait for my husband to read it just for the laugh factor. So yeah, I walked away. This was like a play on the Grinch. There was like poems in the beginning, like the Grinch poem kind of thing. And that was the second thing I didn't like. I didn't love the writing. I felt like it was very cheesy. I felt like it was a little amateurish. Like, I hate to say that, but I just felt like everything was unnatural. And I read a lot of romance books, and trust me, they say things that are not really said in real life. But in this one in particular, it was very unnatural. Something you would never hear somebody say. Not even like, something that's too dirty. There was some of that too, but even just normal dialogue was just like going on way too long, or just, it didn't seem right. It didn't seem natural. It just seemed very, very cheesy. So I didn't love it. However, all of a sudden I find out there's a sequel, and I'm like so excited by it. I surprised myself with how excited I was to read this sequel. So I guess maybe something about that book just stuck with me. It's set in like this Christmas town, which is very festive. I kind of like the characters, so I was just excited. And when I found out this was going to be about Max, I liked him, so I just kind of felt like excited to get back there. So I don't know, maybe that book was a little bit better than I thought. It did stay with me, and I was excited to read this book. I'll show you the edging again, because I love that. Very cute book. And this was better than the other one. I will say that. I feel like the pacing was much better. Like, it wasn't 0 to 1,000. It was very much normal, gradual, where we had to be. It was definitely a lot of smut on the smuttier end. And the sexy scenes were good. There was, you even see the author tease the book with like, there's a new treat in town. Like, so they use a different candy, which honestly, and I'm not lying here, I always say I have a bit of a sixth sense. For some reason, before I even got to that part and knew what that candy was, I was so in the mood for that candy this Christmas, and I bought it. I bought the candy, and then I'm reading it, and I'm like, oh my God, that is so weird. So yeah, and it's not something that I like get every year, or like, it was just, I had a weird craving for this candy this year, and it turns out it was the candy that was in this book. So anyway, it was funny, it was humorous. Same kind of complaints in terms of the cheesiness, very unrealistic dialogue, very unrealistic conversations and relationships between people, I feel. There's a narrator, like the other book, that talks to the characters, very like tongue-in-cheek, very just kind of comes off as the writer, like thinking they're very clever, like, and it's just a little cringy for me, like I didn't love that. Just weird. It's kind of like, it seems to be like one of those like fantasy storybook Christmas stories, but dirty. So that's kind of what they're going for here, and they do achieve it. It's very Christmassy, very festive, and just fun. So not the best thing I've ever read, not the best romance I've ever read, not even the best smut I've ever read, but just fun and definitely festive. Little even surprised at the end that I honestly didn't see coming. Just a stupid, little thing, and it was kind of cute. But again, not realistic, and I don't really know if that would actually work, but cute. And there's like a second story going on here. Basically, this is about Max and Betty. So Max is the best friend of the main character here, which was Cole. So Cole and Story are in it. It's his best friend, and he has a farm. His family has a farm, and now there's a new woman in town. Her uncle lives in the town, and he kind of brought her in to develop land next to his, and she's also going to open a farm, so it's kind of like an enemies to lovers thing. A little bit of the what kind of like annoyed me and gets cringy is like when the girl doesn't realize how wrong she is, and I just feel like a lot of that popped up here, where it was like where Max is apologizing a lot and trying to make things right, but she's not really in the right either, and I feel like especially at the end, I just feel like that doesn't factor in enough, but it's cute again. So they, it's a cute story. There's an underlying thing. Her uncle is kind of like enemies with him, so that's a whole thing that's got to get figured out, and there's a little mystery there, and it's good. It's a very good story. Some good smutty scenes, and again, very festive, very holiday themed, and it'll definitely put you in the Christmas mood. So not the best thing I've ever read, not the best romance I've ever read, but just fun, and definitely moved faster, even though it was also big, definitely moved faster to me than this book. But really, if you were going to read it, I would still say you should probably read this first, because this just establishes the town, the Christmas competition they have every year. You just kind of I feel like I needed to know what was happening in this town to fully appreciate this book. You don't have to, but I would. And then next, I read on Christmas, actually, very quickly, Oh, What Fun by Chandler Baker. So I read this on my Kindle. This is kind of like a short story, actually. It's just like an Amazon short story. And they actually made a movie of it on Amazon with Michelle Pfeiffer. So that's kind of I saw the ad for that movie, and that's what, got me looking into the story. What I'll say is this. I didn't love the story. The story was only 50 pages, I think. It's a short story. And I liked the idea of it. So basically it's about this mom who does everything for Christmas and then kind of goes missing at Christmas, and the family's got to be without her and figure out where she is and all this stuff. And I guess maybe because if this was a full-length book, I really feel it could have went places and been great. It was funny. I laughed out loud at a couple of parts. I liked the characters, but it was just not fleshed out enough, I think, because it was such a short story, because it kind of left me wanting more in a lot of ways. And I also feel we don't kind of understand, without spoiling anything, there's a line between I'm stressed out and going crazy, and I'm actually mentally unstable crazy. And after reading the book, I still kind of wasn't sure where she landed there, if that makes any sense. It was just, I don't know if this was just it was supposed to be a burnt out mom and going nuts because she's so stressed, but then she does something that just seems actually crazy. So I'm thinking there's mental health problems there. So I don't know. I will say I watched the movie and loved it. And not usually my opinion. Usually the book is better than the movie, because you get so much more out of a book that they can't necessarily fit everything into the movie. But quite the opposite here. We got not a lot in the book because it was such a short story, but then we got much more in the movie. It was almost a 2-hour movie. So they really kind of just took the idea of the short story and kind of ran with it for the movie. And I think it was so much better as a movie. They changed a lot. I'm one for hating changes, especially changes for no reason. There was in the story, there's a homosexual son. Now all of a sudden it's not the same amount of kids or the same gender. Now we have a homosexual girl in the movie. It's just little changes like that. I don't know why we had to make that change. And there was actually something funny that happened with them that doesn't happen in the movie. So I was a little disappointed by that. But I would have been perfectly content never reading that story, just seeing that movie. I feel like you get so much more out of the movie. It was basically a good idea, the story, and the movie really took it further. And I feel like I love where they went with it. I was very clear on like I said, mental health aspects of it. It just, in the story, it wasn't like fleshed out enough. Like I said, like we didn't really, I needed to know, I guess, a little bit more about her, about the characters, and even like, things coming out of nowhere. Like it would have just made more, it just made more sense in the movie. Like I just feel like everything, it was funny, it was perfect, it was a good idea, it played out well. Whereas in the story, it was just lacking in a lot of parts. But again, only 50 pages, quick read. If you're the type to really like to read something before you watch it, if it's a book, worth it. It's, again, only 50 pages. I read it in one sitting, so you could read that and then watch the movie. But I think the movie was much better. I don't think you're missing much by not reading it if you just watch the movie. And then finally, we have The Christmas Tree Farm by Laurie Gilmore. So this is part of the Dream Harbor series, and I recently read the first two books in that series, which is The Pumpkin Spice Cafe and The Cinnamon Bun Bookstore, and loved them. And as with any series, I always feel like the first one, when I first started reading, I thought, is this a little too cheesy or whatever? It took me a while to get into it, but once I was into it, I loved it. Loved the town, loved the characters. And then, as suspected, it kind of just gets better. Like I said, it reminds me of the Rebel Blue Ranch series, where the first one was good, but then they just kept getting better because we're already established. We could jump right in. We kind of have hints to these characters and what, where the next story might lead. So it's great. She sets everything up perfectly. So now we're on the third book, which is The Christmas Tree Farm. This is, I think, the first Grumpy Sunshine I've read where the girl is the grump. So Kira, owns, bought a farm, a Christmas tree farm. And, she's kind of like on her own, starting over, and has to she's not even really that into Christmas, but she needs the money. So she's got to get this business running. And then Jeannie from the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, her brother Bennett, is in town visiting and visits the Christmas tree farm, and it becomes like a thing. And then, and he doesn't even live here. He lives in California, so they don't live together, but they end up spending the holiday together. They just start on this little fling, and it was going to be short-lived, and then he was going to go back to his life, and she's going to be on her own because she wants to be independent and she doesn't need help from anybody. So that's how it starts. But then, of course, feelings grow and everything happens. The one thing I'll say, and it was my same complaint in the last book, the problem is voiced ad nauseum. So over and over we hear, this was supposed to be a fling, but I'm feeling more, or I gotta remind myself this is a fling and this is going to be over, and this is so nice, but it's going to be over, and I can't get too attached. Every version of that we heard over and over from both of their points of view way too many times. I feel like that's most of the story, is just going over, the problem. So that would be my only complaint. But other than that, I loved it. Again, I love the characters, love the town, love the new characters. Everything fits. It's a fun read. It feels like, being somewhere, because you keep going back to Dream Harbor with these books. So I'm very excited. There's still two more. I got one of them as part of my Christmas haul. It's the Strawberry Patch Pancake House, and that involves a character from this book. So it's just, it all fits, and it's all great, and I would totally recommend this series. I'm really, really enjoying it. Again, the Grumpy Sunshine thing and the girl being the grump, it was a little annoying for me at times. I mentioned this with the other book. I hate when the girl is annoying and she's not doing the right thing or seeing what's going on and all that. So I was mad at her a couple of times, but overall just great, sweet, ties in the perfect little details, and things come back at the end, and it was so sweet and so perfect, and I really did like this book. The other part, which I did show you in the last video, I love doing all hardcover, all paperback, so it's very weird since I've got the paperbacks that I went for the hardcover here, but it was because when I took the cover off, because I don't read it with the jacket, which is actually pretty, and it actually has the people on it. The soft cover books, the paperbacks, have just the places on it, but the hardcovers of all of them have people. So I loved it because when I took it off and saw this, there was no way I was not going to be holding this book at Christmas and reading this very special sparkly. I don't even know if you could see how the stars kind of sparkle. It's beautiful. And inside, it's so beautiful. I needed to hold this book. So this was the best part. Having this out at Christmas, it's like its own decoration. The edges are cute, the little dog there. It's great. So I needed to just hold this book, and I'm like, you know what? It's the special holiday book, so it's okay that that's my only hardcover. I'll go back to the paperbacks after that. So definitely recommend this book and this entire series. So that's it for December. And before I end, I do just want to say I'm very proud of myself for doing these videos all year and keeping up with it. And I did it for the whole year. And I will say I've always loved reading, but this year decided to just make it more of a dedicated hobby. I said 2025 we'll do 25 books. That was my reading goal. I got to that around June, so I'm like, all right, let's move it up to my age. We'll do 42 books. And then past that, I was like, we'll make it an even 50. And then, of course, past that as well. Ended the year with 55 books. Again, very proud of myself. 55 books, yes, there were a couple of novellas, couple of graphic novels. Even if you take out a dozen of them, that's still over 40 full-length novels. And I am better for having read them. I truly believe that. Even the books I didn't like as much, I feel like makes me a better reader, better writer. The smutty books, I mean, you learn a lot from those too. We all know it. So really, I feel like I am better for having read all of these books. I am very excited to keep it up. I fell in love with Book Talk and BookTube last year and said I'm going to make an effort to be part of that community. So even if I don't have a lot of followers or people that watch the videos, I'm just thoroughly enjoying talking about the books and just feeling like I'm part of the community. I love watching these Book Talk videos, getting all these book recommendations. There's so many more things that I want to read, so I will definitely continue this into next year. Again, it's New Year's Eve, so Happy New Year, happy reading, and I'll see you in 2026. Bye.